if you don't already know why you're here, we are going to be chatting about Google Analytics with Peter, who's an SEO strategist, senior SEO strategist with SureOak. So we're really excited to have him here today to chat with you all about like Google Analytics 101, WeTravel's integration with Google Analytics and how you can better utilize it for your travel business. Quick preface, if you're not already familiar with WeTravel, we are a booking and payment software for tour operators. So if you're interested in that or have the need for that type of software, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to give you guys a demo of the site. We do also do several webinars every month on different topics. So if you're not already following us, you can check us out on LinkedIn. Maybe one of my colleagues in a minute can drop our LinkedIn link in the chat, and that way you guys can follow us there for any upcoming events that we have. Also, you can join our mailing list. And we do also have an academy on WeTravel as well. So if anybody wants to get resources on different marketing techniques, on courses, on things like we have a disputes course, which is really popular. We're coming out with some new courses this summer on different topics as well that are really, really exciting to be announced soon. So if you can also drop a link to our academy in the course, whoever's one of my colleagues who's here, the academy link, excuse me, in the chat, that would be great. You guys can check that out. There's like tons of free resources there for you too. So quick housekeeping, we're going to have a nice like 45-minute presentation from Peter. If you have any questions throughout his presentation, please use the Q&A chat at the bottom, or the Q&A box at the very bottom of your screen. It's just easier to manage and prioritize the questions there, whereas sometimes the chat gets really busy, so we can't see everything that's coming in. Closed captions is also available for this webinar. So if that's something you like to use, you can turn them on in the bottom of the webinar. You should see a CC button or more, and you can turn on subtitles at any time. Those are powered by Zoom. And we'd also love for you to use the Q&A box. So the chat feature. I'm all over the place today. The chat feature, by default, you'll see it's selected to message hosts and panelists. But if you guys want to change that to everyone, then we can see where you guys are coming from, what your businesses are. You can be a little bit more interactive that way. So you can select it, change it to everyone, and then that way everyone can see where you're coming from. So on that note, we would actually love to know where everybody is coming from. If you want to drop your name in the chat, what country you're coming from and joining from today. And we also had a quick poll. We were curious to see what type of company you're coming from as well. So if you could fill that out, that would be amazing. And we can see where you guys are joining from. So on that note, I will kick it over to Peter and stop sharing my screen and let him go from there. I'm closing the poll in a minute. It looks like most of you are travel companies, tour operators, and then we have like a handful of travel agents, retreat leaders, et cetera here too. So amazing. Thank you all for joining us. Peter, you are able to share your screen. I just enabled it. I don't think you were able to before.
Perfect.
And then you can kick it off from there.
Awesome. Okay,
Ooh,
wonderful.
And also, before I cut you off again, we also wanted to quickly get a gauge on how people are using Google Analytics, if at all. So let me just drop that poll here too, so that you can have it and see that while you are chatting. Okay. Cool. If you guys want to take a minute to fill out this poll, and you can introduce yourself, Peter, and go from here.
Awesome. Sure. Yeah. So welcome everybody to this webinar for Google Analytics 101. Really excited to speak with everyone. Seems like we have people all over the place. And I'm from SureOak. We're a digital marketing agency that's also spread out everywhere. Currently, I'm in Buffalo, New York, which is not very close to New York City, like a 6-hour drive away. But we're close to Niagara Falls. Toronto's right across the border. It's finally getting warm here. So we work with clients across the world as well. So it's very familiar to see, people coming from all over the place. So I'm excited to teach you guys a little more about Google Analytics. And the plan today is to go over just getting familiar with Google Analytics. We'll talk about, in general, how it relates to your business, your website, marketing, online as well, and also looking into the actual software to access some more data and different reports. We'll also be looking into setting up Google Analytics and talking more about how you can utilize it to track engagements on your website. And we'll also talk at the end, just answering questions that you guys might have. And so that's kind of the agenda right here. So let's get into it with Google Analytics first. So I'm going to do an overview of digital marketing to help you understand how Google Analytics fits into the greater picture of things. And I've been doing digital marketing for close to about 10 years across different businesses and agencies, and working with SEO or e-commerce, different ad campaigns that are going on. And I've been able to see a lot of changes that come into the world of digital marketing. And I wanted to do just a quick breakdown of ways that people can get to your website and interact with your business online, which if you remember back in the day, the websites were first coming out, they're really clunky, kind of static HTML websites that were pretty much just, like billboards online that you could view business information. I just saw that poll too, that it looks like we have different levels of experience with Google Analytics. So hopefully I'll be able to cover some information in here that addresses your different needs. But as I was saying, for like a website, we've definitely come a long way. There's faster internet speeds, there's faster devices, and even the websites themselves, they have many elements that are much more interactive than in the past. And so with digital marketing, what we're trying to do is connecting people online to your business's information, which the central piece of that is your website, where you have a lot of content and opportunity to engage with your customers in many avenues. But additionally, with marketing efforts, there are promotions you can run through paid ad channels, through social media, email marketing, app marketing. I listed just a couple of those logos for these different platforms. And what happens when you get all of these people coming from different places is you get a lot of data. And as a marketer, it's kind of our job to bring together that data and connect it with your marketing channel so you can understand what's important and effective. However, even for someone that's experienced like me, it can be a challenge because there's so much data available. And so we're trying to paint this picture for business owners, for our clients, and even for ourselves to understand how do people engage with the website with many, many touch points available. And what we end up finding in today's ever busy world of channels, depending on what types of marketing channels you may use for your business, is you end up with many different analytics and data solutions that are available. So in this list here, you can see typically when you build a website, and website builders and CMSs nowadays, there's like an internal report that they have. They have their own dashboards that will tell you how many people are coming to your site, where they might be coming from, and a pretty general level of information. Additionally, if you have social media profiles for your business, you'll also get reporting just for the profile itself of how many people might be liking your page, following you, looking at your posts. But if you run paid ads on top of having those profiles, you'll even have data reporting just for specific campaigns for each of those social media profiles. And there's also paid search ad platforms like Google Ads or Microsoft Ads, which also report a lot about different campaigns and ads. And so what happens is when you get all this information, there's a lot of opportunity for information to be disconnected. And so the natural solution for the industry has been to rely on website analytics tools. And that's the same category that Google Analytics falls into. Now, there are other types of platforms out there beyond Google Analytics, but a lot of websites in the industry rely on Google Analytics as, it's a huge company, and they have continued to expand on their platform since 2005, creating new versions, releasing more updates, more reporting, different features. And this is why it's analytics platform of choice for many people in the industry. So what you'll get is that support from Google, working with different marketers, marketing agencies, professionals. Many, if not most people, have this experience to be very familiar with Google Analytics, and it also integrates very well with not only Google products, but also other types of advertising platforms, social media platforms. All of these tools come together to report your data. And it's really important to be able to understand this data, because then you'll be able to understand how your marketing efforts are doing at a higher level. And additionally, you can connect the dots between how users engage with an ad and come to your website. Because just like traditional marketing, there's a customer buying cycle where people have to discover content to make decisions. And it's not just a single touch point, single ad, or visiting your website once or twice that ultimately leads someone to making the decision to book a tour or to select you over another vendor. And that's why when we have Google Analytics, we can get reporting at all these different levels of touch points, when people might be just searching very common questions like, what country should I travel to? Or what activities should I look for in a trip? And as they make those decisions and gather that information, they get closer and closer to deciding on, actually making a transaction. And with our reporting, we can capture a better picture of these steps, understand where people might be coming from with advertisements, or where they might just be coming to your website to learn more. And so we're going to go into Google Analytics deeper to understand these different pieces of data you can find by basically just looking at the reports they have. I first wanted to cover some terms and definitions. There's a lot of different terms that Google uses to identify the information available for you to understand. And these are some basic ones that will appear in a lot of reports. So in terms of acquisition, which focuses on how people are coming to your website, it's important to understand the structure that Google Analytics reports on. There are channels, there's mediums, there's sources, and the source is the most specific format for acquisition, and the channels is the broadest. So the channel can be a whole group of your sources combined together. These are usually very predetermined groupings. And for instance, if people are searching you from different search engines, they'll be gathered together into the organic channel. And so when you're accessing reports, you'll be able to see quickly what traffic is coming in this channel. Additionally, for mediums, there's a little bit more customization available, where you can define your own mediums to better refine where traffic is coming from. But generally, there still are organic, there's still social, but we can include, cost per click, and refine it more from the paid channel. And so it could be a paid channel, but a cost per click medium, or it could be paid and go into a social advertisement and so forth. And the source is the most specific type that will actually list out by name, google.com or other types of search engines to help you identify that. So this is all pretty important to understand where your traffic's coming from. But additionally, you can look at audience measurements. And I wanted to define just a basic understanding of how Google Analytics looks at people coming to your site. And so there are users and there are sessions. And so a user is just the person visiting your site, while a session is the actual visit itself. So if a person were to visit your site sometime in the early morning and then come back again later at night, it would be based on the tracking snippets that we have. Google Analytics would identify the same user and then give that person an extra session. And so typically we'll see more sessions than users. And Google does provide more information about returning users and new users, and information on the session itself. So this is just a general framework of some of the things we'll see. But as I said, when we're going into the actual software and the dashboards, there really is a lot of data. And so I'm breaking down here different reports that you've access to once it's set up. I bolded the sections that we'll cover a little more in depth, but even within each of these sections, there are many subsections of smaller reports that continue to get refined. And I give a caveat here that it really depends on how much involvement you may have with your marketing efforts. And also like what type of marketing efforts, because for us as well, it depends on the types of channels we're using to look at which reports, are maybe more important for us to spend time on. But if you were to just spend all day looking at every single report here, what would end up happening is you miss the bigger picture as you get deeper and deeper into the data. And it might be hard to trace yourself back to seeing what's happening across your whole website and marketing effort. For example, if we dive into looking at specific action people are taking on a specific page, we can try to make adjustments to changing where a button might be placed or what color or what text is there. But that change might only affect a small percentage of visitors. And so if you as a business owner or head of marketing or something, you might not need to use every single report all the time, but it's useful to at least know what data is out there. So let's go into, we'll start off with the home section. So the home is a really nice overview, and depending on how much involvement you have with marketing, I would recommend this being your go-to place to spend the majority of your time. From the home section, you'll be able to find little buttons that link you to other reports. And so it'll give you an understanding. If you're not super familiar with all those tabs, you can look at these dashboards and see the information that sticks out to you and just go directly into that section. And so I'm going to open up this view, and this is exactly what we're looking at here. And so Google actually provides a demo account that anyone can access to. It has plenty of data for us to look at. And so we're looking at the home section right now. And in this section, what we'll see is an overview of just people visiting your site. These are top level metrics with some comparison data, which you can access in any report as well. Here it's tracking for the last 7 days. And this button, as I said, would bring you to the audience overview. But you can see, top people, pages people are visiting, which links to the real-time report. And additionally, if you keep scrolling down, you'll find more and more information. So here is dealing more with acquisition. So what channels are people coming to on different days, which you can modify as well. There's some page speed insights, things that could be improved to make your page work faster. And then there's reports more on users. So are people coming to your site and doing things, or are they just leaving your website? How often are they coming back? What time of the day, what country, what city, what device are they using? And also a lot of more content on your website or goal conversions. And you can see how this already is a lot of information. But what I would say is important is, you can focus on certain reports in certain areas and pretty quickly navigate through from the homepage to get to there. So we'll look more at the different reports here, but even from just this view, you have access to a lot of information without having to get too bogged down and clicking through here. Now in my slide, I didn't have the customization section bolded, mostly because this is a feature that requires more setup. In the customization section, you can get custom reports, alerts, and you can set up dashboards that mimic what the home already has, but can focus on specific sections of your reporting. But all of this does need to be customized, and you have to set it up to pull whatever data you're looking for. And typically it's something for more advanced users to get into. Our agency utilizes Google Data Studio, which is another product to pull data over and create easier to read reports, but that's just the customization section. Now, going back to this, we'll go into the real-time section, which is a really cool report that beyond the home section, this gives you a nice picture without getting too deep into the data. And I find it pretty useful for a lot of clients as well, where here you can see exactly people on your site at this time. And so it can be, in the past 30 minutes, different people viewing pages on your site, or per second viewings, and you can look into active pages. And here you can start to see some of this subsection breakdown where you can quickly get a little lost in the data if you keep clicking in and looking, right? But it does give you extra information, if you're really curious about locations at this time, and maybe you want to dive a little deeper, you can also keep drilling in and looking at the city that people are coming from. There are some browsers that are not set, so it's not all the information available, but it does give you quite a lot of information. And so what I would say though for real time is, if you make a very big change to your website, maybe you just launched a promotion and you want to see if people are starting to look into it, you can be able to look at some of that data right away with the real-time report. And that's just something nice to have in your view. Going on from there, we'll look at the audience. So with the audience section, I think this might have actually the most subsections, and I listed them out here to show you. But what's important is you can find more information about the actual people coming to your site. A lot of this data is, it's pretty anonymized, so it's not like personal information, but we are looking at splitting up these users into different segments, which can be useful for identifying, how your marketing campaigns might be working, and whether these people are finding your information useful. And so when we look into the audience section, we'll once again open that and go into the overview. You'll be able to see quite a bit from this part. Here you can modify the date if you want, and this chart is pretty. These charts are very easy to use in terms of manipulating data to look at different time frames or different metrics as well. But what we can see from just the offset is how many users are actually new versus there's returning visitors. Most websites don't have might have a higher amount of returning users, but this is like the demo page for the Google store, and so people might just be going there. But you can see as well that there are more sessions versus the total number of users. So they might be coming back once or twice in a day, and you do get some information about what your audience, what language they might be having set on their device, what country, what city, once again. And you could go even deeper in here. There are categories here that do require some setting up. And there also are some of these beta signs, which means it's not available for every analytics property. Depends on your website and how many people are visiting your site as well. But those are some of the newer features Google uses to try to give more value for especially marketing efforts. And from here, you can also look into technology or devices that they're using, which can help you to see are there more technical sides of your website that need to be updated to work better for different types of devices, but also even just understanding where your people are coming from, taken from their Google account information that Google Analytics has access to. So this section does have a lot of information, but there are parts that do need to be set up. And at the very least, you can get a good picture from the overview of your audience base as well. And so we'll continue from there and look at the acquisition channel. So this is very helpful, especially if you're running different campaigns and you're looking at where what sites or what traffic is coming from to your website. And so typically you'll have a much bigger part of this pie chart being the organic channel, where people are coming to your site from a search engine visit. But you can also drill into these and click into different searches, but you'll see a nice comparison of your different channels to see if different channels have better or more users, more sessions, or are doing better in terms of conversions. And also in this breakdown, we see some integrated traffic where if you have Google Ads running, you can connect your accounts to see those campaigns. You can connect other types of paid campaigns as well, and your social campaigns. And Search Console is another Google product that helps you understand your organic traffic more too. And so this report is very beneficial, especially if you want to monitor any specific campaigns, and you can also monitor them there as well. Just while understanding your entire website traffic and being in one place. And then we're going to continue onward to the behavior section. So behavior takes data about your users, and now it focuses on engagement. And so there are some, here we will be able to look at site content. We'll be able to look at events that happen. So that's the actual actions people are taking on your site, and have a better understanding of how people are perceiving the way your website is set up. And so with this, we go into the overview section. We'll see information here about page views, which is one of the default events or actions that Google Analytics sets. So this just tracks people going through your website. If I visited 10 pages on your site, there'd be 10 page views associated here. Unique page views refers to not just looking at the same page over and over again. So typically that is less if people are going back and forth. But you can also see some information about how long they're spending on your website, or the bounce rate, which is if people go to your site and leave right away, which could indicate that your content is not what they were looking for, as well as how many people are leaving for different pages on your site. So in here, you can see a higher level breakdown based on the actual pages themselves. So you can see right away, if there's special promotional pages or content you're looking for that you want people to visit, how much of the total page views are those pages responsible for. But additionally, there are events. There are more site content reports dealing with where they landed on your site, where they left your site. There's even site speed, suggestions or recommendations to improve your website performance. And then we can also look at events as well, which we will talk about more in depth. But once again, that's the actions that people may take on your website. And so that's the behavior section, very powerful for looking at content and user engagement. And so lastly is the conversions section, which deals with having goals. So goal completions and goal value, all of these metrics are actually built off of the events. So it's saying you can track a lot of different actions people may take on your site, but then you're specifying that specific actions are more important. And so what that might be is somebody filling out a form, somebody going to your form page, somebody clicking on a link that is to a phone number, right? If these are important to bring you towards potential customers, potential leads, right? This can be a great way to signal to Google Analytics that these are actually goals. And right next to the bottom of the funnel, right, either it's capturing a transaction or right before a transaction. Then if you come to this section after you have it set up, then you'll be able to quickly assess, of these very important actions, what's happening and how are people getting to these places, right? So in here, there are several types of reports. So you can specify your events as goals, and then you'd be able to look at the overview section and get to that same screen where you can see where they completed that goal. You can see a breakdown of what acquisitions. So if your paid ads are doing really well or it's organic. You can also look at more details of the steps people might have taken to get to your goal. You can look at goal URLs a little more closely too, but this is a little more detailed information that might be helpful if you're really involved in a marketing campaign, but it's all here once it's set up. There is an e-commerce section, which can also be set up for your site. And if you're booking and getting the values of the bookings integrated in, then this is particularly helpful just to be able to see transactions and conversion rates with that as well for different products or services that you're offering. And with that, I believe that's the last section I bolded, but we do have just a couple more here. I didn't include them. The attribution beta. This relates to understanding your goals more. It's like a secondary level to even more so track how people are getting to your goals. And it deals a little bit more with the steps they take to get to your site and eventually engage, which you'll have to set up to run concurrently with your goals. The Discover section is very helpful if you're new to analytics, and it just gives you a lot of resources. So you can come back to this section once you have an account set up, and you can access the demo account from here, and also take some courses that Google offers. And the very last section is admin, which we will spend more time in for looking into the setup. So that is the different sections of reports we're covering more in depth. I do have a little piece here about Google Analytics 4. So as I was saying, Google constantly updates their products, and you might have noticed this like banner flag that's on the top of Google Analytics when I'm looking at it. So right now, we're actually in Universal Analytics, which is Google Analytics 3. And Google has been working on Google Analytics 4 for a number of years, at least 3 years, to my understanding, probably longer before they released it to more of a public view. And so what's happening is Google saying they won't track your data in Universal Analytics by July next year. And that's why there's this disclaimer to try to set up Google Analytics 4. And so we'll cover both of those in our following slides. But what I want to say is that the recommendation for now is to create both accounts. So if you already have a Universal Analytics account, or you just have a Google Analytics 4 account, it's still better to have them both running, as not all the features have been released for the newer version. And additionally, a lot of people are more familiar with Universal Analytics. So if you're working with any, marketing professionals, that's still the preferred method as more features get rolled out for Google Analytics 4. And so we'll kind of cover how to do that to install and set it up. But that's just something you'll definitely see as you set up and use Google Analytics. So getting into the setup here, I do have a lot of instructions on these slides, and we're probably not going to go through like everything step by step, but I will show you generally how to set it up. You can refer back to these slides later. There are also a number of different ways to set up Google Analytics with your website, and I'll cover that too. But generally, what you'll have to do to start is to make sure you have a Google account, because when you go to analytics.google.com, it will ask you to sign in to your Google account. Make sure that's the one you want associated with your analytics. You can always share the access to other emails, but it's good to have like a central one that you use to set up the actual platform. So you'll be able to log in, and then once you get into there, you'll be going to creating an account. So I had a separate one open, but if you get into the admin section, and then you just look at this and create an account, it will bring us to this screen. So we're back to account setup. All right, so there, just write in your website URL, just to be able, or your domain, so that you can identify it. And then we go into the structure of Google Analytics. So both Universal and Google Analytics 4 have properties, and that's just how they organize the actual structure, so you can go between each one. And so when you're setting up a new account now, it will automatically set up for Google Analytics 4. So this is a Google Analytics 4 property. Well, actually, we have to enter our domain, and then you can check off some of these extra services. You don't even have to check off any of them if you want to not share data with them, but it's up to you to look into how much you want to share or what notification you want to get. But when you get to the property, this is for a Google Analytics 4 property. And what you'll do is type in your domain name again, and it will usually append it with Google Analytics 4. You can set your time zone if you want. And then you will also, you can change the currency and you can always edit this later. But in my instructions back here, that's for Google Analytics 4. Oh, sorry, and Google Analytics 4 up there. But then in step 3, we're going to look into the advanced options so we can still make sure we're creating that universal analytics property. So you have to click on that button or that link, and now you can get into this property. It'll give you that notification once again. But what you all you have to do is click the switch, and now you'll be able to create both of them. So make sure that selection is there, where you'll then once again type in your domain, and that'll be for universal analytics. And you can enable enhanced measurement so you get more information. And then you'll go on to the next section, which I did cover here for about your business. This is just general business information. To select, you can just select whichever business is relevant to you, what category, how many employees you might have. And then just for this example, small, and then all of these features, it's up to you for what you want. It doesn't really change your actual what you're getting out of analytics. It's just they might give you some like insights more directed towards these. And so you can actually, maybe just check like a few and then go into create, and you have to accept the terms and agreements. And once you're there, you will be able to install your code. So here's where it can be a little different depending on your website. We're going to follow the general instructions that should work for the majority of websites, but your CMS or your website builder might have specific instructions that you can just quickly search up for installation. They might have a spot within your website where you just have to enter part of your tracking code to make it a lot quicker. So it might just be like copy your measurement ID and put it into this box. But if your website does not have that setting, you'll have to look into ways to install your tag, and you can see there are a couple methods. Google Tag Manager is a product that we won't be discussing here, but it is a way to install. It does require a little more advanced understanding to create that account and connect that with your website. So we're sticking with just adding this code. And so what you'll do is copy the code snippet, which has your tracking ID for, this is the Google Analytics 4 property. And then you'll add it, you'll have to find the page source code for your website and add this to the head section so that it appears in every single page on your website. If this is too technical, you can definitely ask a developer or even reach out to the support for your CMS and see if they give you instructions. But once this code snippet is pasted there right after the head section appears, the head tag appears on your code, we have to go to our other property to make sure we're tracking both properties at once. So we would paste this into our code, which I show here, and then you'd have to go back to your other property. So once we have that copied, we can close that, and you'll see here, we're in the admin section still, and we're in this property. All you have to do is go and look for the UA code property. And then once that loads, we'll go into tracking info and tracking code. And these instructions should be in here as well, tracking info, tracking code. And here, now we have a very similar looking code, but the difference is where this is tracking for the UA code. It's also tracking up there. And so what we'll do is you just have to copy the second to last code line and append it to the other code block you had originally pasted. And so in my example here, I show how you do that. You copy that and just add it in right underneath it. And now you have this combined code snippet in the head section. And once you update your website, it will be tracking for both of them at once. And how you can check that is you just check your real-time reports and see if you have your website open in another window, then it should show you that you are actually on your website in real time. All right, so that's the setup. And as I said, there are some other ways to set it up. You can use Google Tag Manager. And so it might be a little different based on your website builder and such as well, but generally that method will work for the vast majority of websites. And now I wanted to get into our events and goal tracking section. So this comes back to a couple of those reports we saw, and it'll also cover our integration with WeTravel. And so I wanted to explain a little more about the events, right? So these are the actions people can take on your website, and they can further be specified as goals, which are typically lower funnel events. And so the structure for an event means you have to pass information to Google about your event, which requires updating some of the code on your site or using a tag manager to update the code on your site. So it gets a little more complex here to set it up, but generally you'll need to have an event category to describe where the event takes place, an event action, and then you could have a label. So how this works is if I want to track an event for somebody clicking on or submitting a form, I probably named the category broader, so it could be form submission, and then or it could be website form or booking form, and then we would add in the event action of submitting the form, and then the event label could be the exact form name or maybe where it's located on your website. Now, all that information has to be added to the actual code on the site as well, which is where it gets a little more tricky. And a lot of times with businesses, this is where other companies and agencies come to help out to make sure you're tracking it correctly and getting that information, because Google does not automatically track these actions for you, and you have to set it up to understand the data more. And so once we can get that, we can look at types of examples, which include clicking on different things. You can click on links, you can track that, submitting forms, playing videos, downloading files, scrolling on a page. And once you have those events, you want to specify special ones that are more important as goals. And that's where you can look into submitting a form. You can, similarly, types of forms that could be tracked, or calling a phone number, clicking on a button. And what this will do is you can look at your events and goal data and better understand where people are in that funnel of purchasing something on your website, right? That purchasing funnel. Because if people come to your site but they don't take any action, that means they're not really engaged with your website. But if they came to your site, maybe they clicked on a button to get to a page that begins the form process, right? That's a higher level of engagement. And even more so if they click there and they fill it out, then you can really track all of those interactions and get a better picture of how people use your website. And with these goals, you will have to set up the goals as well. And so you'd have to go into the admin section once again. And we're in the Universal Analytics property once again, and you go into goals and the view setting. And here you'd be able to create a goal and specify all the information. And so my instructions here, it gives you a general layout for the steps, where if we were to make a goal that tracked an event, so a form submission, we'd have to go into custom. And then we could name the goal, like, form submission, and then click on event right here. And then the goal details, this is kind of familiar with what I said about that event information, right? So we'd have to take our event category, our event action, label if you have it, put it into here to match with what we had prior, and then we'd be able to set up the goal. All right, so all of that to say, it's a little complicated, takes a lot more work to do so. And what WeTravel has done is take a lot of that work out of the picture so that you can start tracking your goals faster. So this is a WeTravel Pro feature, but you'll be able to go to your WeTravel profile page and find a Google Analytics section. Once you click add, you can add your Universal Analytics tracking code, which if you go back into the property, when we were installing it, you can find that right here. And so you would just copy that code. And then once you get there, if you have e-commerce tracking already enabled on your website, you can enable it here, and then you can go into adding any linked domains. And with this, we're just going to follow the little guide right here and show you what happens. It will automatically populate all this event information for you. So you don't have to set up any of the event information and hard code it to your site. Instead, it will populate automatically when people click on Book Now buttons across your website. And to set up the goal tracking, if you want to do that, you'll just have to copy and paste the information here. So you can go to the event category section and copy, trip page or button widget, and you can copy Book Now button click for the event action. And once you have that implemented, it will start tracking goal completions when these parameters are successfully met. All right, so what that does is it'll give you access to that conversions and goal behavior section to look more closely at how people are visiting or engaging with your website. And WeTravel is able to support you through understanding this integration a little more, answering questions, and help you understand what's coming through to analytics. But that is a great way to easily get access to this information without having to go through the trouble setting up a lot of it yourself. All right, so that was, I think that's pretty much most of the the webinar here. I wanted to quickly just go over SureOak a little bit. I know there's a lot of information for analytics, and we really just touched upon a lot of the top level reports, but our agency is, we work with a lot of different companies and we make use of analytics every single day. We've worked with clients to set up to audit their tracking and goals and make sure they understand their businesses better. But we also work with a lot of different areas of digital marketing to promote our clients and get them new customers and the right traffic they're looking for. And so you can find some more information about what we're doing, and also specific services that we offer, related to Google Analytics or your website, building your brand online, etc. And so, if you have questions or want to see what we can do for your website, your business, that's something you can definitely reach out to our team for as well. But that is my Google Analytics 101 webinar for you guys.
Thank you, Peter. So good. Do you have where people can contact you at, or the best email that people can reach you guys at? Jen, our product manager, who's actually going to take over the questions in a second, dropped your website. But if you want to drop a good email in the chat too, where people can reach out to you if they have specific questions or want to chat, that would be great.
Awesome,
and
yeah.
I'll pass it to Jen, and she can field some of the questions that have come in for you to take.
Awesome. All right.
Great. Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining us today. We had actually a record number of registrants. It was 421 last time I looked. So it was exciting because it's the first time that we've done one of these. We have a planned series of quarterly webinars that are a little bit more product focused. So the idea is, or the goal is, to kind of highlight places where our product intersects with larger trends that are shaping the industry at a given moment, and we hope that the knowledge that we're going to be sharing will help you grow your business, whether or not you're using WeTravel. But on that note, we're actually starting to think about a topic for next quarter's webinar, and there's two trends that we're kind of seeing a lot of right now. The first one is around workflow and process automation, which we've been tackling with our Zapier integration. We are building our custom APIs. We also have an ebook on sort of digital marketing process automation tools, that kind of thing. Maybe I can drop that. So anyway, yeah, first one is all around that stuff. And the second one is around, the second concept is around new financial technology that's shaping the way that travelers purchase and finance travel, and also the way that businesses are managing their cash flow and accessing capital. So love to get any quick feedback on what you all are interested in. So yeah, otherwise though, I think we can kick it into the Q&A section. So Peter, I'm just going to read out. First question came from Brida, I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, Reed. She says, I had a big bump in traffic just one day last week. I don't know where it came from. I can only see direct. Was it just bots? It did seem to coincide with an increase from legit queries. How can I find out where they came from?
Awesome. So yeah, direct traffic can be from bot traffic. It could also be from internal traffic. What we would do in those instances, though, is try to look a little more closely at there are parameters we can look at for where that traffic is coming from. So what I would say is you would go back into the acquisitions report, and then you'd be able to navigate for that specific channel. You could definitely change the date range to that specific day. And then you can click on that direct traffic channel, which should be that spike of traffic. And then from there, it should give you a breakdown a little more of some of the information that's coming in. And then when we look at that information, you can try to see if there's you'll be able to look at like some of the secondary dimensions or channel groupings, and that gets a little more complex. But if it's bot traffic, you usually see it being, like an average session duration being like super fast. Maybe it's just zooming through a lot of pages on your site. And you can also look into, we look at host name. So if you'd have to look at direct traffic and then go into, there's like a little tab at the top of the table called secondary dimension. And from there, you can search up extra information to pull from that traffic that was there. And if you look at host name, you'll be able to see some more information about where it's coming from. And sometimes you get really weird looking URLs that might signify it's from a bot itself. I believe there is let's see, so you would have to look at, that information and try to compare it to other direct traffic that you might be getting. If it's not on your website for a long time, it's very high bounce rate, or it's a lot of new users, or even what country might be coming from, then you can determine what that traffic is. But what I would say is, in most cases, if it's just a one-time spike, it shouldn't be affecting your your greater like organic traffic rankings and stuff like that. It's just, you want to make sure it's not valuable traffic that you're losing, right? And so that's why you did bring up it seemed like they were either going through bookings, and I would just make sure that these direct traffic, try to see if it's coming from people just typing in your website, and seeing if that's the case for how they're getting access to your website. But taking a look at some of those pieces of information to better understand where it's coming from.
Thank you, Peter. That's great. Next question is from Melissa, the travel chick. She is wondering about selling tours or trips on Google Merchant Center. Can we do this?
Google Trips on Merchant Center?
Yes. That's what I read.
Google Merchant Center. I don't know if you know anything.
Yeah, no, that's what I said. I'm not familiar. So
if not, we can always give back to them on that question and look into it. Yeah, more.
Yeah, and I'd have to look into that a bit more, in terms of, I'm not sure if that's a newer thing for just a specific industry. I would say if it is from Google, at the very least, there is definitely an easy way to integrate it to your analytics, so you can track the data that you're getting with your trips. And so that shouldn't be a problem. I'm sure there are guides you can easily look up for that documentation. And I think that would be very helpful, especially if it's linked to your website. You can better understand how people are getting to these or signing up for these trips and associate it with more of your website traffic.
Sounds good. Thank you. Next is from an anonymous attendee who they are asking, are there fees associated with these Google Analytics accounts?
Yeah, so I think I did mention that, yeah, Google Analytics is free to use. There is a paid version, but it's for very, very large websites. That's like your enterprise system. But one of the reasons why it's so widely adopted is because it's free platform, and so there should not be fees you should worry about with this.
Great. And then last question, at least in the Q&A, Andrea is asking, what's your opinion about the migration to Google Analytics 4? I know we've heard a little bit about that already, but if you have anything to add, and I'll also add from our side, we are looking forward to that, looking ahead into the future, and in terms of WeTravel Zone integration. Before the end of the year, we're likely to catch our integration up. But Peter, I don't know if there's anything that you didn't mention that you want to share on that topic. Otherwise, we can leave it there.
Sure. Yeah, I would actually, something I want to share is that Google Analytics 4 is coming out. I think there's a lot to learn because the features are so new. And so unfortunately, something we're actually seeing in the marketing industry is there are some people who are trying to like stoke up fear about this new platform and saying, oh my gosh, your platform is going away, so you should hire us to set it up for you. And I've actually seen some people charging really, really high prices for setting up. And I'm not, I can't exactly say what prices, I'm not too sure, but it's something to be on the lookout for. You might get increased spam actually, or people that might not be the best to work with that are just solely telling you to change because you're seeing that notification. And so what we recommended is to set up both of the universal and the new one. You will probably be relying on the current version more for now. And as the new version gets updated and it gets closer to that time, for our agency too, we're actively trying to make sure the different features are coming across. And we're also working to educate our clients to see how we can utilize both of them. But I would just say you don't need to worry and drop the old one right now. In fact, you should keep both running at the same time.
And all the more reason just to reach out to Shurok to help them set it up and get you guys streamlined and understanding everything. There was one other question in the chat I noticed someone, and then we can leave it there because we're right at time. Luis Ernesto asked, with the code, I have to copy and paste the code in every window of our website. I think you mentioned it was just in the one.
So typically in like a website builder, if you're using like a WordPress or Shopify or any of those, you'll be able to access the source code. And so once you put it into there, it'll automatically display on every page. So it's basically you're putting the code in that section and telling them to add that same head section to every page. So you don't have to click on each page and individually add. And also it depends on your website. You should always look up really quick too to see if there is like either there's a lot of WordPress plugins which make you just add that tracking code and you don't have to deal with any of the more technical side, or your website might already have that built in for you to copy paste the code in.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks to Raul for joining he's from our engineering team. He built a lot of the integration that we showcased. So thanks for being here in case there are any technical questions. Carrie and I couldn't answer. He's been there.
Thanks for listening.
Backup. Yeah.
And on the webinar or on the poll results, it looks like 66% of people were interested in like a future webinar on like automation tools. So we'll look into that in the coming quarter. So thanks everyone for answering that question. I also dropped a ebook we have in the chat that is already like a very basic level at that, if that helps your business at all. But this has been great. We will be sending everyone the recording. Peter, everyone's asking if they can get your slides as well. So maybe we can include that in the recording. Great. And then we'll also include the best email and way to reach Shurok in the recording email that goes out either later this week or early next. But this has been so helpful. Thank you so much, Peter. And everyone's saying thank you.